You are tuned into a Wednesday edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. And you can also catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. For the new listeners out there, you can check us out every single day, Monday through Friday. We bring you episodes before 12:30 p.m. Central Time, and we also bring you the Royals Postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo. That comes after each and every Royals game. Now, today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, it was finally a good game to recap for Kansas City after their 6-1 win last night against the Rangers, and it was the offense. I would say a combination of the offense and the pitching staff doing their part. The Royals really needed Seth Lugo to deliver, and he did just that. 6 innings, a 1-run ball, struck out 9, and the offense, they were able to flex their muscles a little bit. He got a 3 spot in the first inning. Maikel Garcia had to hit with runners in scoring position. Salvador Perez homered in the first, and then he homered later on in the game. Bobby Witt Jr. had a multi-hit game. That's back-to-back games for him. And he homered for the first time in a game in Arlington, playing in front of a lot of friends and family in his home state. But we also can recall what he was able to do in the home run derby last year. So not the first time he's seen the ball leave the yard at Globe Life Field, but he was excellent last night. Salvador Perez was the MVP of that game, and the bullpen was able to get it done with Jonathan Bolin, Daniel Lynch, and Steven Cruz. So now you get the monkey off your back. You don't feel as heavy going into tonight's game, and the big question mark is going to be, as it's been so many times when we've seen a output like that, when we've seen 5, 6, 7 runs. What do you do the next game? And that's what I brought up in my little 60-second YouTube short, which you can always check out if you want my content coming to you after all the Royals games. Said it doesn't really matter of this 6-run output if you don't do anything tonight. Like if you score 6 last night and you follow it up with 1 tonight against Patrick Corbin and you lose 4-1, then it didn't mean anything. And maybe that sounds harsh, but I really don't believe it is. I mean, if we are talking about what needs to happen for this team, and that's for the offense to take flight at some point, and maybe yesterday was Salvador Perez's coming out game, right? The breakout game where he's finally been able to tap into that power again. He's squaring up the ball. He's hitting to the opposite field with authority, with power, and that's the game we're going to point back to. But I hesitate because we did the same thing when the Royals were in San Francisco. He had the opposite field home run. He had a 3-hit game, I believe, and he was playing a little bit better of late, but overall it was not good enough to be putting the Royals offense back to where they should be. Bobby Witt Jr., you have the multi-hit game last night. You have the multi-hit game on Sunday, though the Royals did lose on Sunday. That just has to be a common theme. We know that Bobby Witt Jr. has to be a driving force in the lineup, and when you see him go 0 for 4 and not move any runners over, not get on base at all, it's just not going to be likely that the Royals win that game. Maybe they do, where the bottom of the lineup comes through and Jonathan India and Maikel Garcia pick up the slack at the top of the order. But those two guys, and I'll throw Vinnie Pasquantino into this as well, those three, as they did last year, have to be that driving force. And I'm saying this even while Maikel Garcia is hitting .310 and has been statistically the best hitter on this team. But Maikel Garcia going into the year was not the guy you look to say, hey, you're the one driving the bus. You are the one that has to do everything for this offense. And I'm still not going to do that. You want him to sustain this. You want him to be an all-star this year. You want him to have a career year. But when it's all said and done, I would much rather have the big three in Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, and Vinnie Pasquantino carry the weight of this offense. And anything else you get from the rest of the group is going to be a positive. And for tonight, you are facing an arm that was bad the last couple of years, a soft tossing lefty. And maybe I shouldn't say soft tossing. He used to be a very hard thrower. The velo's just come down a little bit since he was at his peak, and that's Patrick Corbin. If those three can string together a combined 4 to 5 hits, I feel good about the Royals putting up 5 to 6 runs. I really do. I feel that when you go back this season and you look at certain games in which Vinnie Pasquantino, Bobby Witt Jr., and Salvador Perez did something and did more than the rest, everybody else sort of falls in line. And the reason that is you're able to overcome an 0 for 5 with 2 Ks from Jonathan India. You're able to overcome, a hitless night from Drew Waters, and I think it was a 1-hit night for Kyle Isbell, and Jac Caglianone goes 0 for. You're able to overcome all of that because your big three were able to do most of the damage. And that was the recipe for last year. Who drove in all the runs? Bobby Witt Jr., Vinnie Pasquantino, and Salvador Perez. Now, for our second segment, which we'll get to here shortly, it is going to center around Jac Caglianone and why these early struggles are things that should have been somewhat expected, maybe not to this magnitude, but also can help him long term. But these struggles that he's going through can't be the main focus, if you understand what I'm getting at here. Last night, he goes 0 for 4. He strikes out twice. And we don't talk about it too much. I know we will be talking about it in the second segment, but it's due to the fact that Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, and Vinny all did their part. All were able to do something. And it was mostly Salvador Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. with the 5 hits. Bobby had a solo home run. Salvador Perez drove in 3 total, or 4 total, excuse me. So you had the majority of the offense coming from 2 guys. But for the rest of the year, the rest of this series, the rest of this road trip, an extended period of time, that has to be the goal. You get those guys going, everybody else can have a weight lifted off their shoulder. Because if those guys aren't performing and you shift that pressure to guys that shouldn't be taking on that pressure, you're going to get series like last week where the Yankees swept you, where the A's swept you. And when those 3 just aren't doing their job, and they've got a lot of pressure, and they understand that being the top 3 most notable players on the roster. And yes, Jac Caglianone is a notable player. He has less than 50 at-bats in his big league career. So he'll get there at some point. He will be one of those guys to take on that pressure. And even Michael Garcia maybe deserves that pressure in 2025. Considering he's hitting .310, he's just so incredibly underrated right now. Like nationally, he's not being talked about a lot. And when the Royals are going through offensive struggles, he's not being brought up because he's still the one hitting. And the Royals would be losing games. So that clearly is not a recipe for success. It can't just be Michael Garcia carrying the weight of this offense. You get the guys from last year getting into a groove at the same time, we're not going to be talking about the offense every single night. It will just be a group that is doing enough and is relying on the pitching staff to win them games. I mean, how many times have you heard me say this group just needs 4 or 5 runs every single game? At times, just 3. That pitching staff just needs a little bit to give them over the hump, turn it over to the bullpen, and win a lot of games. But unfortunately, the offense has not put them in a spot to take a 3-run lead and hand it off to the bullpen. Last night, they were not only able to add runs in the first inning, they were able to continue to add a run here and there. And that's the best type of game to watch. You break out early, and then periodically throughout the game, you find a way to scratch across a few more runs, and you're not sweating it out at all at the end of the game. And the Rangers are a lineup that if you do get out ahead early, they don't have the offense built to come back. So tonight, with Chris Bubich on the bump, facing off against Patrick Corbin, see what Bobby Witt Jr., Vinnie Pasquantino, and Salvador Perez are doing in the box score at the end of the game. They do a lot. I'd anticipate another Royals victory, and for the first time since the St. Louis series, a series victory. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we are going to dive into Jac Caglianone a little bit. A tough start to his big league career, but why maybe it can be a good thing long term. We'll tell you about it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about Monarch Money, our title sponsor of today's episode. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off on your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB for half off on your first year. That code again, LOCKEDONMLB for half off on your first year. Don't get caught up paying for subscriptions you're no longer using. Have a complete game plan for your finances so you can get started today with Monarch Money. Let's talk about the rookie phenom and Jac Caglianone and what we've seen so far from the big right fielder slash first baseman. Offensively, outside of the 4-hit game he had in Chicago, it has been a bit of a grind. Also, if you had a certain level of expectations, this was to be expected. This was something that was always going to be a part of the process. And I don't believe that J.J. Piccolo and Brian Bridges and all the front office minds were looking at Jac Caglianone in AAA and said, well, he's going to come up and hit under 200 in his first 15 to 20 games. That's not something they completely anticipated. I'm sure they were hoping for better results, as every front office personnel member does when they bring up a prospect this early. But it was in the back of their minds, or maybe it was near the front of their minds, of we hope for the best. We also know that every big league hitter, when they're called up, unless you're just some type of a freak like Juan Soto who just hit the ground running at 19 years old coming up from high A, there's going to be some growing pains. And for those out there saying, well, he's overmatched, he's not ready, this guy needs to go back down to AAA to get more seasoning. You know, the body language wasn't great last night. I didn't love the body language. You could definitely see for the first time in Kansas City, or I guess I should just say in the big league level because they were in Arlington last night, that the body language was a little bit more noticeable. Like he was defeated last night. Struck out on some bad pitches, didn't hit anything that hard, had the soft grounder to first base, had the pop up to the catcher, had the 2 strikeouts. One was looking at a pitch that was right on the inside corner, and then his 4th at bat, he struck out on the pitch that was in the dirt. That was one of the first times you went, none of those at bats were very good for Jac Caglianone. And it's not to, put lipstick on a pig when you're hitting 200 and say, well, he had some great at bats there. But for a rookie, like you're looking for certain things like that. And I'm sure that we can all agree that for this team to make the postseason, they're going to need Jac Caglianone to be a top 5 offensive contributor in the lineup. He can't be OPSing under 500. And that's the thing with 40 to 50 plate appearances. You need 2 to 3 really good games to change that average from 198 to 260 or 270. It's that early on where the numbers really don't matter. It's more so how you're looking. And I want to give credit to Alex Duvall, a great Royals follow out there, on the topic of Jac Caglianone, because this, I do believe, is a statement I wholeheartedly agree with. And it's that in AAA, he was never going to get this type of pitching. He was never going to have to make these type of adjustments. It was not going to do him any good. The only thing he was going to get out of AAA, the rest of his time down there, was confidence. I'm tearing up this pitching. I'm hitting 340. I've got 15 home runs in the season. I can dominate this level. To me, that was all he could have gained out of it at that point. In the major leagues, you're going to have to make adjustments at the highest level. And if you can make those adjustments, it's better for you long term. So far, he's gone through this adjustment period. Guys are throwing him a little more different than he was in AA and AAA. They're able to paint 97 on the black. They're able to have more movement, more spin on those off-speed pitches. And it's going to be, up to him to make those adjustments and being a little bit more patient. Because when I talked to Mac Quatrero last week and asked him the question about Jac Caglianone, and it was the 1-0 loss of the Yankees, in that game, he worked a full count 3 times. 3 out of his 4 bats, he worked a full count. None of them resulted in hits, so you can bring that part up and say, well, he didn't get on base. But it was different than what we were seeing early on in the first couple of bats, which was 0-0 swinging, no ground balls, striking out on 4 pitches. Now, you work the count a little bit more. You spit on some of those close pitches. You lay off those sliders in the dirt. You're eventually going to be able to connect on a mistake. And I'm sure that he's feeling pressure. That was going to be a part of the gig, that when you call up somebody this quickly with an offense struggling, which is why J.J. Picollo didn't want to call him up super early. It still ended up being early, but he wanted the offense to be in a groove so that he could step in, go through these struggles while the offense is still performing. Hence why we talked about the first segment, and it's that the struggles of Jac Caglianone take a back seat if you're winning 6-1 and you have your top players that are contributing. It allows him to go through these growing pains, get comfortable, and start identifying certain pitches. He's played in every game since being called up. He's gotten the look from the right side. He's gotten the look from the left side. He's faced some really good arms. On his hits, he's smoked the ball, but he only has 1 or 2, extra base hits so far. That's going to have to change to be a top 5 contributor in the lineup. But again, there are enough tools there to get him to a certain point at this level. And I feel it's a good point to bring up Nick Kurtz of the Athletics. And early on in his major league career, which was just earlier this year, he went through a little bit of the same struggles that Jac Caglianone was going through. He wasn't walking at all. He was striking out at a 40% clip. He wasn't hitting for much power. He wasn't going gap to gap. He was a singles hitter. He would hit the ball hard, but he was striking out a lot. He wasn't walking. And then it took him about a month to truly get comfortable and take some of the pitches that he was at one point swinging at and laying off them, getting into hitters' counts, allowing himself to get these opportunities of being aggressive. Allow himself the chance to be in a 2-1 count, to be in a 3-1 count, where Jac Caglianone hasn't seen too many of them. And when he has, he is hacking away 3-0 or 2-0. That's what he's up here to do. He's up here to swing. But I would say that it took Kurtz about a month, and then he also had the injury. But now look at him. He has the bat flip, walk-off home run last night. He homered in the 9th inning against the Royals. He's done some impressive things. He started to walk a little bit more. The on-base percentage is north of 300. That was something he wasn't sniffing early on in his career. And for Caglianone, it really is just a stretch of games where you feel really good about all of your at-bats. It's not going to be this series because he wasn't great in Game 1. But tonight, I'll be curious if he'll be in the lineup against Patrick Corbin. Not because they need to bench him due to the struggles, but maybe he just needs an off day. Maybe he needs a quick reset. Then again, he is a 22-year-old that has all the energy in the world, needs to play through it, and so I could absolutely see him back out there in the lineup and looking for another multi-hit game. Really, he's only had 1, so not going to be asking for a 4-hit game, but I would love to see more of a patient approach. Tonight, tomorrow, the next series, just showing the growth each and every game. I know there's going to be ugly performances like last night. That's always going to be a part of his game, where even when he does get established, there will be those 0-for-4 nights with 2 or 3 strikeouts. He's got some swing and miss to his game. You're just hoping you can minimize those amount of games and maximize those games where he's 3 for 4, 2 for 4 with a home run or multiple home runs. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, I promised yesterday that we talk about the mock drafts for Major League Baseball. Who are the Royals looking at, and who are some good fits for them? We'll tell you next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about Trade Coffee. Let's be real. Coffee isn't just a drink, it's a ritual, a lifeline, and the thing that gets you from half asleep to fully functioning. And if that's essential, why settle for anything less than amazing? That's where Trade Coffee comes in. Whether you are gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tackling an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why you should start with the perfect cup of coffee. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or a pour-over purist, they've got the roast you'll love. And for me, doing this podcast in the morning, I always need a little pick-me-up. Coffee's the way to go, and Trade Coffee absolutely should be what you are picking up today. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our customers 50% off for a 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. Let's talk about the Major League Baseball draft, where the Royals will be selecting and who they might be looking at. Maybe for some of you out there like me, you're watching the College World Series, keeping an eye on a few of the top prospects there, if they'd be available for Kansas City, and thinking to yourself maybe what approach this team should have. They'll have a pick at 23, and they'll have a pick at 29. So the Royals will have a pick at 23, and they'll have a pick at 28. They'll be able to bring in 2 guys that will likely jump near the top of their prospect list. But what should the approach be? Is this going to be a team that targets another college bat? I mean, you're not picking top 10 anymore, which is a great thing. You don't always want to be in the top 10 and waiting for these guys to get to the big leagues, and that's all you have to look forward to because your big league team is so bad. You get 2 first-round picks, and it's going to be later on in the draft. So all those top prep bats and those top college arms, they're going to be gone by the time the Royals select somebody. And I would love to know in the comments where some people are thinking, if you feel they should draft another college hitter that's ready to go for next year, if that would even be possible at 23, or if they should take the slower approach, go after a prep bat, truly develop them, and then 2 to 3 years down the road, you could have a significant prospect that's waiting to be called up to join the lineup in Kansas City. Or maybe you have the other side of thinking, and they need to stick pitching because pitching has been this currency in Kansas City. And, pitching is a currency of baseball, but the Royals have been so damn good at developing pitching ever since Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove and Mitch Stetter got here. They've been able to turn around a lot of careers and develop young arms. You go after a prep arm or you go after a college arm, you feel pretty good that when they would get to Kansas City, they could have a lot of success. But I had the chance to look at ESPN's mock draft and who they have the Royals taking. At 23, they've got Josh Hammond, the third baseman out of Wesleyan Christian High School in North Carolina. He's ranked 18th in the top 150. And here's the little paragraph they have on him. Hammond has a number of potential landing spots starting around number 10 and ending somewhere else in the mid-20s. There are parallels here with Austin Riley, a player that Royals scouting director Brian Bridges drafted while he was in Atlanta. I'd expect prep pitching and or a prep shortstop. Lots of names are mentioned, especially given Kansas City's history, at their next few picks. So in ESPN's, mock draft here and their little article that was posted a few hours back, which by the way, if you want to go and read it, it was done by Kylie McDaniel. The idea is that the Royals may lean a little bit more toward the prep pitching side of things or the prep hitting side of things than going with a college bat or a college arm, which leads me to pick number 28. They have the Royals taking Daniel Pierce, a shortstop out of Mill Creek High School in Georgia. So is this the right way to go about things? And going after a 18-year-old kid that you need to develop for 2 to 3 years. Best case scenario, you are developing for 2 to 3 years. Or is this a team that needs to take a look at some of the college bats who are now playing in the College World Series? Got a couple of kids from Arkansas that would be a huge boost to the system. LSU's got some players as well. Those two will square off again, by the way, for the second time in Omaha. The prep approach is never a bad thing. Again, when it comes to drafts, I never look at a first round pick and say, there's no logic behind it. There are guys that don't work out, and there's always going to be busts, and that happens more often than not in baseball than every other sport, because you are trying to predict what a kid's future might be when they're 18 years old or they're 21 years old. It's a little bit easier on the college side of things, but you may not get the type of ceiling you could with a prep bat or a prep arm. The reality is the Royals do not have an abundance of minor league depth right now. Since calling up Jac Caglianone, there's very few guys, 1 through 30, in that top 30 list that pop. That pop is big-time prospects. 3 of them are catchers. 1 of them is not even playing in high A right now due to working back from the broken hand injury. That's Blake Mitchell. Carter Jensen's that big-time bat prospect you have, but even league-wide and nationally, he's not really recognized as a top prospect. He's a top 100 guy, but again, he's more so of your top prospect than baseball's top prospect. If you go the prep bat approach and you want to bring in 2 guys you can craft and mold and turn into a top 20 guy in all of baseball, well, you got to be pretty confident in your hitting development, especially down at the lower level, because it's been a while since the Royals have drafted and developed a late first-round pick. And the reason I put that in there, I say late first-round pick, is to me, Bobby Witt Jr. doesn't really count. I mean, you are talking about one of 2 guys in that draft that was can't miss. It didn't matter who Bobby Witt Jr. was going to, he was going to be a superstar. And that was something I vividly remember in 2019. It was Rutschman and it was Bobby Witt Jr. Orioles and Royals are going to get a multiple-time All-Star. And that was the reward of losing so many games the previous year. But every other year after that, when the Royals have tried to draft a hitter, and it wasn't always a prep bat. I mean, they went after Blake Mitchell in 2023. Caglianone doesn't really fall into this list because he was a top 10 selection. He wasn't a can't miss guy, but he was looked at as being a fast riser. He was looked at as being somebody who was not going to be down in high A that long, double A that long, or triple A. The big question is going to be if the Royals take somebody who's not a can't miss prospect, somebody who's got the tools, has the ceiling, has the potential, and you can develop him, that's going to give you more confidence moving forward. Gavin Cross in 2022, he's hitting sub 190 in double A. I mean, he just can't get things going, and the Royals, truthfully, can't really afford that with another first-round pick. It's why Caglianone came in at the exact right time. They needed to have somebody they could just call as a big-time prospect. We drafted him early. He's with the big league roster a year later, so we can have a little less pressure on us going into, the next draft. But they've got 2 picks to make here. They got 2 selections to make, and if they want to go with the prep hitters, that's fine. And I like the comp with Austin Riley there. But comps are also a dangerous thing. Whenever you hear, oh, this guy reminds me of so-and-so, puts a lot of pressure on the kid, and it puts a lot of thoughts into the fan base's mind of he's going to be just that. Where in reality, it's very unlikely they can replicate what that player once did. But Brian Bridges, a bright mind coming over from Atlanta, he was one of the hottest names out there when the Royals brought him over, and we'll see what he's able to do here. And I do wonder if some of those top names fall a little bit in the draft, if the Royals do select somebody different at 23. Last year, they were primed to get a prep bat. They were linked to Hagen Smith out of Arkansas, and lo and behold, Jac Caglianone falls to them, and they didn't pass on him. And when they had the press conference afterward, they said it's too good of a player to pass up. I'm very curious where they're selecting now. And with 2 picks in the first round, if somebody falls, do they say too good of a player to pass up? Or do they say we've already been scouting a guy and we like this guy from the beginning and we're going to stick to our guns here? They did the same exact thing with Blake Mitchell. So you have 2 of the previous years that had 2 different approaches. Can't wait to see what the Royals do in the upcoming Major League Baseball draft. Well, that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we'll have more of a breakdown of that series between the Royals and the Rangers and look ahead to the Padres series over the weekend. Also, a reminder that we will be doing the postcast tomorrow afternoon. Chance will be a little bit busy, so you can look for 2 things of content coming from yours truly. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.